Friends, I'm here with Dustin Pari of Ghost Hunters fame. He will be at the Texas Theater Monday, May the 20th with his show, Ghosts. Do You Believe? Hello, Dustin. Thanks for talking to me.
It's my pleasure. I'm doing very well, very well. Been on the road for like a month and a half, I think, but been having a great time. Show's going great, meeting a lot of cool people, checking out a lot of great venues, having a wonderful time.
Cool. Well, let's talk about the show right off the bat. What, because it sounds unique. I'm sure it is. Ghosts, Do You Believe? What exactly can an audience member expect at that type of show?
It's been a great experience, I think, for many theater goers, some first time paranormal people that are just kind of curious about this. And the way we have the show set up, it's in two parts, right? So the first part, I come out, I do a presentation for about an hour. We look at some of the history of paranormal investigating, some early evidence, some questionable evidence, and then I share some of my own evidence that I've gathered over the years. But the first act is really taking apart questions about the paranormal and helping people to understand different parts of what we do as paranormal investigators. And for me, it's more of an underlying question too of what it's like for us as I believe we to be spirits going through a human experience. And I like to talk about the way that we feel sometimes as we go through this world where things don't quite match up quite right. And I think that very commonly we have questions about what happens after we pass away. And so we really kind of tackle those, the ideas about death, the ideas about spirit communication, documentation of the dead. All these things are handled in Act One. Then we take a little break and we have some fun in Act Two where I handle questions live on stage that the audience supplies.
Yeah, that's great. So have you had any interesting questions that people have asked you?
Yes,
I'm
yeah,
sure.
indeed. It's fun because I've challenged the audience. Like I've been doing this show for a while, and I've also been doing presentations for many years. So I get a lot of the same questions, and which is good. You dance
Yeah.
it through broadsheet, but we've kind of challenged the audience to ask out of the box questions. So sometimes they're paranormal related, sometimes they're not, but it's always a good time.
Okay, and I'm sure you have a lot of specific investigations that you talk about, or specific paranormal experiences that you talk about. Or does it change from city to city, or is it the same show, or what is your?
The show is pretty much the same, but we do spend a little time talking about the local theater haunts,
Yeah.
if there are any, and I already know some over at the Texas Theater. So you guys are rich in your paranormal
Yeah,
history.
well, there's the non-paranormal history of the Texas Theater with Lee Harvey Oswald, and then and I've been reading some articles where employees who worked at different times in the Texas Theater saw the same thing at different times. So I guess you'll chat about that.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. It's an interesting piece because, like you said, it is tied to our American history,
Uh-huh.
but then it also has some of its own little ghost stories and legends as well. So we'll definitely talk about that.
Now, can you guarantee the ghosts will show up and say hi,
No,
or no?
no,
You
you
were
can
figuring.
never. I always tell people if people are guaranteeing that spirits will show up and take part in the presentation, they're faking it because that's the only way to guarantee that happens. So we don't do that at all.
Yeah, that's a red flag. Okay, so I'm sure this career that you have, there has to be an origin story for
Mhm.
a paranormal investigator. So, do you have a moment? Is there a specific moment, or just a series of things, or did you fall into it? How did you get on the path that made you a ghost hunter for your life? And
Yeah,
how guided?
this started when I was 9 years old. I had seen what we would call a shadow figure by today's standards, but as a kid, I had no idea. I was just in my childhood bedroom. I saw this thing in the doorway, and I was just terrified of it. And I actually said all my prayers, and just I never wanted to see it again. I just wanted it to go away. But it kind of planted that seed in my head. I needed to know more about it. So that's when I started going to the library, started taking out books. I'm old, so we didn't have Google. So I had to go actually do the work at the library and find
Mhm.
out all these answers for myself. But growing up in New England, we have a great haunted history there, between the Native Americans that were there and our early colonial settlers. There's a lot of great history. So there was a lot for me to explore as a kid. And then once I got my license, we start going out, checking out, all the things I tell people not to do now. Don't go to the abandoned buildings and those things. But
Right.
that's really how I started until I saw Ghost Hunters on TV, their first season. I was very curious. I'm like, who are these guys? How are they invited in people's houses? And then to find out they were there in Rhode Island where I live. So this
Yeah.
is amazing. And the opportunity just took off from there. And I ended up traveling to 27 countries across 6 continents in over 30 years of doing paranormal research. So I've been quite well traveled, and I've seen quite a bit.
Yeah, that's wild. I remember when you started on the show, did you just approach them out of the blue, or was there a situation
Yeah.
that was available
I,
and you put your hat in the ring, or
I emailed them constantly. I drove by their headquarters and knocked on the door,
uh-huh.
and nobody got back to me. Nobody would answer the door. It took a while. Took a while, but I wore them down, and that was the way I was eventually brought into the group.
Yeah, that's great. Persistence, right?
Yeah.
Okay, now anything that you've been on, an investigation that particularly stands out in your mind. If I say name that one, which one is it?
That's going to be the Clark Air Base in the Philippines. We
Okay.
went out there as part of the Ghost Hunters International show, and the Clark Air Base was an outpost for American soldiers at the end of World War II, and then also during Vietnam. And it was a place that was closed down. After the war, they were trying to repurpose the buildings, and the security guard, who was our client there, had these amazing stories of hearing footsteps, hearing American soldiers talking, seeing a white misty apparition moving around the building. And there was a volcanic incident that happened that caused so much destruction to the area. They decided they were just going to let the building go to disrepair. They weren't going to do anything with it. So we had the opportunity to go investigate it before anything else happened to the building. And it's the only case I've done in all the years of doing this research. It's the only case I've done where everything that was presented to us as a claim by the client, by that gentleman, everything he said we had witnessed or documented in the 2 to 3 nights that we investigated there. And
Wow.
that is so extremely rare. One, that anything happens at all. But
Yeah.
never mind, night after night, we had activity and we were able to go through all the evidence and show this guy, like, yeah, man, like you are absolutely right. And it was very meaningful too, not only on a paranormal level where we're able to see these things, but then to present it to this gentleman.
Yeah.
And he had become kind of a laughing stock. People said he was a drunk, people said he was crazy, and he was making up these stories. But when we were able to show him the evidence, it really vindicated him. So it was very nice on a personal, emotional, and a spiritual level.
Yeah, that's great. That's good. You help them. Now, how do you approach skepticism like that?
I totally embrace skepticism. I think that we should be skeptical about everything, not just the paranormal, but
Yeah.
even just the things that go on in our world now. Like,
Yeah.
always ask questions.
Uh-huh.
Always ask questions. Never just accept things as face value or do stuff because people tell you to do it. You need to be thoughtful of things. And with the paranormal, it's no different. Like it's an interesting journey for us, and I think that sometimes some people kind of stray away from it. Many times people were told it's evil. Many times people were told it just doesn't exist. But once you start having significant experiences that you cannot explain away, and it's so important to be hard on the evidence and hard on the experiences to make sure that you can explain, okay, well, maybe this was, this happened or something natural happened that caused this to happen. But when you can no longer explain these things away and you're left with just the idea that it is something of a spiritual nature, I think it really strengthens the case for a haunting, for the existence of ghosts and spirit traveling on after this life. And I think it's very comforting, actually. Just as a person going through this life, it's nice to know that our energy goes on after this and that
Yeah.
there's more.
Yeah. There's something next. Is it scary? Because are you scared?
The
Do you have to
show, or
really
just in
prepare
general?
yourself?
I am not one to boast any false bravado. I get scared just like anybody else. I don't even like going to haunted attractions. I won't go to like haunted houses around Halloween time. I don't
Jump
like
scare.
horror movies. I don't like any of that stuff. I hate pop out scary things. But usually the cases that we do, the research that we do, when these things happen, outside of a loud bang or something getting knocked over out of nowhere, it's usually very subtle. And the recordings of the voices, the slow appearance of an apparition, it's usually very subtle. And if it's what you're looking for and what you're trained to do, it's not frightening at that point.
Hmm. Yeah, cool. Now, let's say I was not a total coward with you, and besides not going into abandoned buildings, what advice do you have for would-be paranormal investigators?
Just keep it simple. Just keep it simple. A lot of people dive right in and they spend a lot of money on very fancy and overpriced equipment.
Right.
You don't need all that stuff. You could use your cell phone and go just to the audio feature and record audio, and you go and ask questions. Sit there and Ask a question, give it 4 or 5 minutes of it. People think they have to rapid fire questions because that's what they see on TV. But keep in mind, what we do on TV is a highlight reel. That's all edited down. Ask a question, wait 4 or 5 minutes, and then ask another question. Do that for, a good series of time. Do it every Tuesday night at the same time if you're at the same location, and wait and see if you get an answer. And then when you get an answer, make sure that you can prove nobody else was around you. There wasn't a TV on or some other nonsense. And then go forward from there. Just build on that. But don't spend a lot of money on overpriced equipment. You can get very simple things that do the same tasks. And again, just be hard on the evidence that you gather, so that when you do capture something, you can say with proof, like, okay, this is something I couldn't explain away. And just be honest with yourself about it. Because I think that part of us going through this human experience, we want to believe, right? We really do want to know that there's something afterwards, or at least curious about it. But don't sacrifice the innocence of that belief with placating evidence and faking things to try to make it feel better. Because when you finally do have that aha moment, when you finally capture a great recording or you witness something, and then you're like, oh, this is a real deal. And that's amazing because you're that close to the other side.
That's great. Good advice. Dustin, thank you so much for talking to me, taking your time out of your busy schedule. And I'm looking forward to Monday night, the Texas Theater, May 20th, Dustin Pari, for Ghosts Do You Believe? Any parting shots, Dustin, before we go?
No, it's my pleasure. I appreciate your time, and I hope everyone come check out the show. It's a show about asking questions, about learning about the other side, and figuring out our journey as we go through this life. And I would love to spend some time with everybody discussing this.
That's great. So much fun. Thank you, Dustin. And you can get your tickets at www.attpac.org. Thanks, Dustin. Talk to you later.
Thanks so much. See ya.